Afternoon, Facebook. Hello, welcome to the Talented People page and our Wednesday lunchtime sessions. Hopefully you can all hear me. I think we are live now. So welcome along. I hope you've got your lunch sorted, soup or sandwich, while you stick us on in the background as we waffle about something hopefully relevant and useful for you guys during this lockdown. While some of you join, I will just remind you a little bit about who we are. So I'm Kimberly and I run Talented People with Rosie Turner. Hello. Lots of you will know that we help indies and groups find excellent talent for their productions, be it in-house, be it for 2 weeks or starting yesterday, as is normally the case. And yeah, we are just running these sessions in the hope that they are useful for you guys and provide you with some company during this very long and difficult pandemic period for everyone. So this week, we are very lucky to be joined by some very talented and brilliant women. And I don't know, we've excelled ourselves. Last week, it was a whole panel of women as well, talking about being a parent in factual telly and how that juggle has happened. And you can find those on our website, by the way. But this week, we're talking about development. And it just so happens these lovely ladies have said yes and are keen to talk to you about the development landscape at the moment. So Rosie and I were chatting about this and we just felt there must have been a significant shift in how development works during this period, where normally you'd be in an office buzzing ideas off each other, where commissioners must have changed the way that they ask for things, and getting into Zoom meetings with them must be a whole different experience to getting in a room with them. So yes, please do, if you have any questions, stick them in the comments and we'll come to them hopefully as soon as we can. But I'll introduce our guests now. So today our guests are Anna Abenson. Hello, Anna.
Hello.
Anna is exec producer at Lion, and she's across its popular factual and formats output, and devised and exec BBC Three's Just One Night, right? Love that.
Yeah, that managed to shoot that just before we all got locked down, and then within days had to take our edit remotely. So
wow,
yeah, it was a full-on early lockdown experience.
Massive learning curve.
Yeah.
And Abby Kumar. Hello, Abby.
Hi.
Abby, whose name you might know, is a development producer. She's currently at Rogo Productions and has been at places like BBC Studios and Full Fat, and outside of development has been trailblazing for the good of the industry with the BAME TV Task Force. So that's maybe where you've heard of Abby. Hello.
Hi.
And Kate Ansell. Hello, Kate.
Hello.
Hello, Kate. So Kate is a freelance exec. She's currently at Firecrest. And Kate was an assistant commissioner at the BBC in daytime and early peak, just for a couple of years before that, right? So it'd be very interesting to hear from you, actually, having been on both sides of the fence in terms of commissioning and development. And then Lucy Bacon, who is the director of unscripted development at Glasgow-based Two Rivers. And you were wall-to-wall head of development for a few years before that, right? Yeah. So thank you for joining us all. Amazing experience here at both sort of exec level and development producing level. So I think the sort of most burning question, I think, for me is the general sense of how pitching has changed over COVID. We're used to these brainstorming sessions and then getting in with commissioners where it would normally be the MD or the exec going in the company to pitch. So I'm imagining this whole pandemic has shifted that massively. I mean, shall we start with Lucy? Do you want to start with how do you feel the pitching process has changed?
I suppose it was a bit of a shock at first because, it's good to get in a room with people and pitch, but I think we all kind of adapted. You got to adapt, haven't you? And I think that's what development's all about. It's kind of, adapting to the situation. It's always changing. And so in many ways, because we were all at home, we had more access to the commissioners all of a sudden. So we were having lots more conversations. And also because the schedules kind of changed because we stopped filming things, and then all of a sudden all the dramas kind of disappeared, and they were moving programmes onto BBC from 2 to 1, and basically there were lots and lots of new opportunities that kind of you had to be really kind of fleet of foot, kind of, they were like, you know, we need ideas and we need them like for Friday. And so we'd all kind of jump to attention and go, right, okay, come on everybody. So although it was quite tricky, you know, there was a real energy, there has been a real energy around it the last year. I think we've really, you know, kind of embraced it and kind of really given it a good go, and kind of some of it has really kind of borne fruit. Other things have, you know, in true development style, just died a death. But you know, I think it's changed, but I think there's been some kind of exciting elements.
Sounds like the pace has shifted. Yeah. Kate, how have you felt?
Yeah, I started execing in September last year. I was at the BBC until June, so the end of my commissioning experience was remote, and then I started execing in this environment. And the main thing I feel at the moment is I need to have two brains. There's you're coming up with ideas and talking to commissioners and going, this is an idea that if we did it after COVID, we could do it like this. But if you need something immediate, let's do it this way. And you're kind of having those conversations in parallel. Do you want it now under COVID restrictions, in which case it has to look like this and feel like this? Or do you want to talk longer term? And it's tricky because I think there was a point last year when everyone thought that around about now in the coming months, we'd be a bit free of restrictions and able to produce normally. And that doesn't feel like it's happening in the same way. So there is a constant conversation about what to do and when and how.
Yeah, so you'd normally have to be able to turn an idea several ways, but now you've got to turn them several ways, and two ways, you know, underneath that one, like the now or the later. Yeah, interesting. Abby, how have you felt, broadly speaking?
Broadly speaking, I hate Zoom pitching. I think it's like the worst thing ever. I get Zoom fatigue because I think, you know, being on your screen all day, and brainstorms are all online now as well. So I think that commissioners feel it too, from what I've chatted to them about. But it has also equalized, I think, a bit more with the like indies that are regional and in London. I think that it's a good thing in that way. But I do prefer kind of just like writing a really good deck and then just emailing it to those commissioners, because it's just like, we could talk about this and it could be slightly awkward and I don't know how much to show you in this deck. And, you know, the presentation of the deck also is like, I can't see you and your reactions and what you're reacting to well properly. So it's definitely been a learning curve in terms of how best to do that.
The reacting, that must be, that goes for your team, right, as well as with your commissioners, because you feed off any sort of energy that you're either getting back or not, I suppose. So Anna, have you experienced some of that in both pitching and sort of team environment?
Yeah, definitely. I think you know, it started off, I think I really recognise what Lucy was saying there, really quite full on, lots of pitch meetings, lots happening over Zoom. And I think as time's gone on, and as Abby says, everyone's getting a bit of Zoom fatigue. I think we are all adapting. Some things take place on Zoom, and then we've just got a more conversational dialogue on email with commissioners, and we are sending far more in advance. And, you know, like Kate said, just being more fleet of foot, just react. The linear channels particularly, they're changing constantly. I think they've had to deal with significantly more challenges than the streamers. And so whilst they're figuring it out and that's trickling down to us, we're then figuring it out. So rather than wait and have something in the diary and it's in 6 weeks' time and we prep that, it's all just a lot faster.
Yeah, so it feels a bit like, on the one hand, there's obviously some positives, there will be some negatives as well, I suppose. Not there's a lot that we can do about that.
I actually really quite like pitching on Zoom. I find it's just an equalizer in some ways. Like when you're in someone's living room, it's just a bit more intimate. So that formality of, you know, waiting in reception at Channel 4 or BBC and going up and waiting, you know, for the commissioner to come in with a entrance, we're all just sort of there, like you're on mute. It's just it feels a bit more informal, and I quite like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. There is something that probably makes you much more nervous to be in the building waiting reception half an hour late, and so maybe you come in with a bit more confidence, I don't know, in your own home environment.
I think so. Also, I think it's been a lot easier, you know, and the more the junior members of the team have been coming to loads of pitch meetings, because you're just not spending half your day traveling there and back. So we, you know, it can be afforded that whoever's worked on that slate, why not come? Of course come. So that's
a really interesting point. Yeah. And so they can be a bit more included and have the kind of exposure to the pitching the pitching process, as well as the commissioner seeing their name and face, I suppose. Yeah. Kate, how does it felt? So you were an assistant commissioner at the BBC not that long ago, before your job at Firecrest now. How has it felt for you being this side during a pandemic?
So the thing that's strange is my entire job has changed, but my surroundings are completely identical. I feel like I need Firecrest branding on my windows or something, so that I feel like I've changed it. So I work at Firecrest, and I've known Firecrest for quite a long time. So I had some of that familiarity, and in some ways I live in London and they're based in Glasgow, and it was because everyone's remote, it was much easier for me to work at Firecrest than it might have been otherwise. But it is strange to be doing a new job with lots of people I haven't actually met except on screen, and in my little 1-bedroom flat, which is a lovely flat, but it's, you know, it's trying to differentiate the days and differentiate the job. That was quite a lot of mental work at first, I think.
Yeah. And have you found pitching do you pitch into the department you used to be?
Yes, I do.
Is that strange?
Well, I mean, I know them well. And it's fascinating to see how they react when you're pitching to them. I've been in pitch meetings with them. It's not, my old department are friendly, so it's not difficult. It's a nice dynamic, but I find it very difficult to pitch on Zoom. I feel like I'm much better in person. You can react much more strongly to what somebody's doing and how they're reacting.
Yeah. So let's
step out the room if you need a break as well. That's
it's quite exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the body language as well. Yeah.
I'm constantly slightly paranoid about my body language.
Yeah. Where's my hand?
Enough? Do I look like I'm listening?
Yeah. Actually, I did want to talk about was the junior side of things in development, especially. So I mean, TV in general is a people industry, isn't it? So we feed off each other generally and like that energy. So that's hard anyway. But in development, you get your ideas from the people that you are with, often by talking things through. And also being a more junior person in the industry, I don't think you necessarily appreciate working from home as much, because you come in for the camaraderie. And we've certainly found that some of the candidates that we're liaising with on a daily basis feel like that. Lucy, how have you felt that the sort of junior members of your team, or generally anyone that you know junior in development, has sort of coped in terms of the pros and cons of this period?
I mean, I think we've been really aware of it, and because obviously, you know, when it comes to everything's on Zoom, it's always the loudest voices, the most confident voices that always kind of break through. And I think we've really, really tried to work hard in two different ways at Two Rivers. So the first is information sharing. So everybody knows what's happening at the company. It's not just the execs. So we meet at least once a week to just basically talk about what's in development. You know, there's 3 different unscripted departments all doing quite different things. Sometimes we come together and mix the genres, but it's really nice. It's really nice to get us all together on that big Zoom, and everybody takes a turn to talk about what they're working on, what they're excited about, any development gossip they've heard from friends. You know, it doesn't have to be all super formal, and I think we've tried to keep it as informal as possible. And I would say it's taken a while, but I do feel that people have got more confident because they know it's a safe space where nobody's going to get judged. It's just information. What are you doing? Are you enjoying it? You know, does anybody, and quite a lot of times people have said, I need a bit of help. And, you know, other people from different genres have kind of teamed together. And it's kind of, I think that's been really good. And I think the other thing is we also try and have cross-genre brainstorms at least twice a week, which are they're not focused on any specific brief. It's just people come along, and it's a show and tell, and it's kind of what have you seen, you know. So it allows people to say, I haven't got an idea, but I've seen this really funny meme, or I've been playing a game with my family over lockdown and I think it would make a great quiz. And it's kind of starting points and and that's been really good because there's no pressure on people to kind of pitch and deliver a fully formed idea. It's just we're just trying to create creative spaces where people can just kind of hang out, and then there's no pressure at the end of those meetings to carry them on. And not everybody comes to them, but they seem to have really worked and offered a voice to everybody and a confidence.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds like a sort of a takeaway for anyone here who's sort of got a team that perhaps doesn't do that, because I've always wondered how that works really. You know, if you're a young person, you've got or a junior person I should say, and you've got, I don't know, you've got something to say, but it's not sort of worthy of setting up a meeting with you as your boss, or you've got a question to ask and it's like you haven't got a colleague you're sitting next to just go, oh, did they say that I should write it like that? That is quite tricky, isn't it? So to have a sort of an informal gathering where you just chew the fat.
And it's really brilliant because it means that, you know, one of our factual team came up with a really brilliant kind of comedy and entertainment format just from something they saw on Twitter, you know, and it's not something they will particularly develop, but it's just lots of different voices. Having a bit of fun, but also for us as execs, we take a lot of these ideas away and then carry them on with the teams.
Yes, no, that's really interesting. And actually there's a comment already, thank you Eleanor, right, that might be relevant here. She has a question. So a lot of development idea inspiration comes from reading lots of news, right? But the news as of late is obviously quite depressing and draining. So what are the panel's thoughts on keeping your mental health in check, you know, while you're scouring for stories and ideas, whilst also trying to stay creative? Has any one of you got a thought on that?
I think it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult too because you have to be tapped in, and by being tapped in it means you're on social media or you're on all those websites all the time. And I think most development people do generally struggle, especially when you're working on topical shows, because I've worked on topical shows before and you have to know what's in the news. I did a topical show around the time that Trump became president, which was 6 weeks of very intense kind of being on top of the news. I think just having breaks, and then, you know, when the working day ends, just have a hobby that is not on your laptop or your phone. And like, I've taken up piano and I've taken up French because I'm like, that will both make my brain work better, but also just does not require any screen time. So I think just having those healthy, like, time out, cut off times,
like using your brain in a totally different way. Because even when you're sitting on the sofa watching telly, well, you're watching telly, A, and B, you're normally on your phone, aren't you, on your newsfeed? So to step away from that completely, I think that is really good advice.
I work in current affairs, and current affairs is always fairly brutal when you're on top of it all the time. But at the moment, there are times when it's just like, I'm just going to go for a walk. I'm just going to step out of this for half an hour and do something that doesn't involve looking at a screen. I've been desperately seeking activities that aren't screen-based. I'm in a support bubble, so I've been spending a lot of time hanging out with my best friend. But just step away from it as much as you can. And I think it's worth saying that while we're all working at home, it's fine to go for a walk in the day and come back half an hour later. There was a point when I wasn't doing that, and then it was getting to 7 o'clock, and then it was dark and wet, and I don't really want to go outside now, but go outside at lunchtime. It's fine. You can send an email in half an hour. Very little is that urgent that you can't leave it 20 minutes.
It's a bit addictive though, isn't it? Once you're sort of typing an email and then you think, oh, I've got to do something else, and I've got to do something else. It's quite hard to take that break. Now, I'm totally guilty, like you, Kate, of getting to that point. And thankfully it's a bit lighter now. So sometimes I can push through to like 4:35 and then I'll go for a quick walk. And if there's anything that needs tidying up at the end of the day, I'll do that. But that's great advice. So piano, French, hobby, go for walks, or, guitar, anything like that.
Yeah, I also took up embroidery, which is actually very, very mindful. You can do it while watching TV as well. So yeah.
Wow.
I've been taking up loads of hobbies because I have no children and no responsibilities.
I've ordered a pottery kit. It hasn't arrived yet, but I'm allegedly going to do some pottery at some point.
I love that. This is good. Surely this is all creative for your mindsets as well, and your ideas for new formats. It's going to be, well, there's already done the sewing bee, Abby. What else could we do with embroidery? Not sure.
Embroidery mixed with French and piano. What format is that?
Yeah, something that you could pitch to RTL or something. So what about viewing consumption? I don't know if any of you guys can comment on that, whether you have sort of, I was just wondering how or whether our consuming habits have changed. I mean, obviously everybody's watching more telly and therefore we need more content, but can anyone comment on, out of interest, on sort of what we're sitting down to watch or not to watch anymore, or how, whether we are sort of binging as much as we were?
Yeah, I think we are binging, and I think because I work in popular factual format, reality TV, it's very much, the thinking is, how do you make it a bingeable show? How do you keep someone coming to the next episode, and you're kind of thinking of your running orders in that way? And I'm sure Abby, Kate and Lucy will get this, but the broadcasters are very much sort of asking for joyful and escapism and serial killers and crime. So it's kind of, that seems to be the trend. And yeah, I feel quite fortunate that I don't work in, we talk to the other departments within Lion, specialist factual and factual, but I find quite a lot of escapism in our ideas and our slate. I think that's, feel quite fortunate to do that.
Yeah, so escapist, aspirational, or murdering people series. Yeah,
we've reached peak. We've reached peak Cornwall, haven't we? Reached peak Cornwall and Yorkshire and coastal walks. I think if you went on any coastal walk, you'd probably bump into Darcy Bussell or whoever else is wandering around.
Yeah,
I
don't know. Maybe there is some more to be had from those.
There's always some more to be had. If you think there's no more to be had and you don't pitch it, there will be an announcement in broadcast when you.
Yeah, that's like dating. Everyone always says we've had enough of dating. There's always room for another dating show. Everyone secretly wants another one.
I personally find it impossible not to develop dating shows.
Dating and food. I just don't think they will ever be off our screens, will they? Nope.
No.
So are there such things then as, so Kate's already mentioned the sort of needing to find two ways to pitch the same idea. So for COVID commission now, or longer term, this is what we could do when we can film like, we used to, like normal. But are there things that commissioners, I mean, you don't need to go into any specifics, obviously, I wouldn't ask asking for that has changed significantly, since this time last year, in terms of, I suppose, like you've said already, joyful, aspirational, those sorts of things.
I would say the big call out is that 9 p.m. format,
right?
That, across the channels. I think all the channels are screaming for the 9 p.m.s, whatever that means for those particular channels. And that's a real focus for us. And I think when it comes to developing those ideas, we're kind of thinking domestically, probably not travel too far afield.
Yeah.
And like Kate says, it's kind of working out how to still make it an exciting format, but if the circumstances change, it's still makeable. So it's kind of, you can kind of, it can expand or, depending on the restrictions. So
are they still desperate for stuff like right now though, do you think, or they all tend to be, they're looking further ahead in general?
I think there are slots. Sorry, yeah.
I've had both kinds of conversations, which is I had a conversation yesterday, which is, this format is interesting and we think that you could deliver something like this now. So let's think about other ways you could do it with other people, because we're looking for stuff we can do now, but also we are looking for stuff in 6 months. So I think there's a bit of both going on.
Yeah.
It's not quite the desperation that it was like straight when lockdown happened and there was like a run for, oh God, we've got so many hours and we can't do any of our international stuff and half our productions have stopped midway. So now it's going back a bit more to how it was, I think, but no international travel. That's not allowed.
Definitely still the panicky sort of, there's definitely still the more urgent emails or requests can you get this to us now? What have you got for this slot? Things like that. So that does still exist, but then that's always been the case. So
yeah. Does it feel like there's more opportunity now, actually, though, because we've got more kind of gaps in the schedule?
I don't know. I am really struggling to know. It's really, naturally, I think the linear channels have obviously, they are struggling. It's hard to know how much money there is and how many slots there are there. And that just feels like something that's ever changing. So yeah, things are still getting commissioned. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Because we often have people asking us actually how to get their idea in front of someone. And it's a difficult one, isn't it? And there's a question here from Gemma Delaney that I'll read out too, but you normally have to be in a team somewhere for your idea to be taken on board and developed, right? But Gemma asks, she says her background is mainly production, so docs and fact end, with very few development contacts. If she has an idea, which is in women's health, is it best to develop it a little bit or pitch it with a few lines just on an email and, trying to find a relevant development contact? So if anyone's happy to share something later, to let her know. But if you are, because I guess there's a lot of people in production as well who are out of work at the moment and are thinking, I have an idea. What do you have any advice about what they should be doing with that? Lucy, you're sort of nodding.
Yeah, what I would say is at Two Rivers and at Wall to Wall, a lot of people would often speak to the relevant contact in that company that they, if they know they want to make the program through that company, speak to the exec that they used to work with, and any good exec will forward that email onto the head of development or a development producer to kind of take it further or get back to them. I mean, that's kind of how it should work. I do get a lot of ideas. It depends on the company. So as Two Rivers, we do take external ideas. Other companies don't. It's just the way that they work. And we always consider them and get back to that person. For me, an idea, it should have something unique about it that whether it's talent or access or some way of authoring it that feels must have. That's what I'm always looking for. But a good idea is a good idea. So if it's a good idea, I'll pick up the phone and say, let's talk a little bit more. But usually then it would go through probably a period of development, so that it's very, ideas are very, they'll probably need a period of development with the team.
Yes, that's the tricky bit, isn't it? Because then what happens to your idea? Do you come on and work on it with them, or do you give it to them with some sort of deal that if it gets commissioned, that's all a bit sticky, isn't it?
I mean, it all depends on what the idea is, if it's their access, if it's their contact, if it's their talent. I think it's something you just work in partnership with, and you kind of organise the terms of the way you're going to work before you dive in there, and make sure everybody knows everyone's happy, and then you kind of take it from there. Yeah.
Anybody else got anything to add to Gemma's question then? Would you do something similar? Would you develop it yourself, or do you think you'd pitch it with a few lines?
It does depend. I mean, not necessarily my current job, but in the past when I was PD, I'm disabled, and I quite often have contacts and ideas around disability, and I would go to an exec that I knew and trusted. I think that's a crucial thing, if there's somebody you trust, and say, this is an idea, I know this person or this story, and with something like that, where it was very personal to me and I had that knowledge and experience, they would then involve me in the development process. But it's different for more general ideas. So if there's a reason that idea is attached to you, that's a very strong reason to bring you into the development process. I think it does depend on the idea and the company.
Yeah. But also, if you're just looking to enter development, I think it's always good to just email a creative director with a few ideas, like of areas that you think are interesting, and they will usually, if they're good ideas and you've thought about slots and stuff for them, I mean, I think it's always good to have a balance of production and development, and working on production so heavily means that you have so much experience and you'll bring that to the development process. And also there's so many like taster tapes and stuff that get done in development that those skills are invaluable.
Yeah, I would say there's a big advantage to just being proactive, isn't there, at this point, and getting in touch with senior people. And like you say, Abby, if you can shoot something or, you know, cut something from clips and send it as a mini sizzle, I mean, I would always reply to something like that, you know, if that's speculative as well. So there's definite scope, I think, there.
Yeah, I think it took me quite a while to learn this in my career, which is you don't ask, you don't get. And I think that that's a really important thing to know. Look, no, don't feel shy to email those heads of developments. If you know, those people should be getting back to you. It might take a while, it might take people a long time. I know sometimes I'll be in the shower and go, oh my god, I didn't respond to that AP from 8 weeks ago, and then we'll send them an email. But you know, don't be shy to get in touch with the heads of development execs, etc., who make the shows that you want, you know, with, you know, the area, a top line idea. And I think that for people who don't know, the reason why some people don't accept unsolicited things is we generate so many ideas all the time that the likelihood is, if it's something quite generic, it's probably existed on the slate in one form or another, which is why what everyone's saying is, you know, if there's a USP attached to it that only you can bring, you know, don't worry about sending that. You know, no one's going to be able to nick it, and people don't nick it. It's, you know, it's a bit of a myth.
Yeah, so you have something that's really personal to you that you bring your unique access or standpoint or authorship from, and then you know, like you say, they can't steal it.
Yeah.
So, and also, if it's rejected, don't, you know, so many of, you know, don't worry. What's brilliant is you sent it in the first place, and it's kind of like send more. You know, it's kind of take on board the comments and don't let that put you off, because you know,
be resilient.
The world of development is full of rejection, but every now and then you get one bit of gold, and you know.
Yeah, it's 99.9% rejection. You've got to get used to rejection. It's the life that we live.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, hitting against brick walls and standing back up then.
You have to be a blind optimist, I think, to work in
development. Do you?
I think so. I'm just always like, oh god, well that's disappointing. Let's just breathe
Move
up.
on to the next one, right?
The next one, maybe just go and watch an episode of Married at First Sight and then move on.
I love that. So blind optimism is definitely needed. I love it. So interesting comment here from James Capria. Hi, James. Netflix and other such streaming platforms don't seem to have a normal submission or commission process. And in fact, act as a closed book if you don't have a past working relationship with them. That seems fair from our experience. So how best do you recommend submitting presentations to broadcasters and streaming platforms, assuming it's through a small production company? I think by that, do you mean, James, that perhaps, you know, what's the best sort of format to getting that in, or whether it's sort of an email pitch or a deck? I mean, perhaps we should talk about, I mean, what is your experience of pitching to SVODs or streaming services? How is it different to our sort of normal terrestrial channels?
You have to do all the work up front. So they want to see a sizzle. And they want to see the full deck, and they want to see it all thought through. And so if you go with often with the UK broadcasters, it can be a conversation because you have that long running relationship. They know your background, they trust you. You say, I think you'll like this idea, where could we take it? With the SVODs, it's got to be all wrapped up with a bow on top. I don't know what you guys think.
100% agree with that. Yeah, it's you know, the sizzle, it's your fully worked up deck, and yeah, it is, and it's less is more. You know, with the linear channels, you might take a few ideas and sort of play it by ear a bit in the room as to what they're after, what seems to be going well. With the streamers, it's kind of, you know, what is that one big idea, possibly two big ideas that we're sending to them, but it's, you know, this is our prize glory that we want to give you specifically. which is quite nice because it's made it all feel just a bit different and a bit new. You know, now having a different way of pitching feels quite refreshing.
There's definitely something that people find very sexy about working for the streamers and, you know, pitching for, you know, we all watch everything. Obviously, we're in telly, we need to, we love it, but there's still that exciting thing about going, what's on Netflix tonight, what's on Amazon Prime, you know, have you seen what's dropped on this streamer? I mean, but is that just because it's something new and we're so used to our old mainstream channels? I mean, what is it?
They have more money, don't they, really? There's more money and so more gloss on the programs. But I do think, like, you know, Married at First Sight is on E4 and everybody's watching that at the moment. So, like, there's still a lot the PSBs do that, like, Netflix and Amazon don't do, and lots of ideas that you would see that are uniquely kind of PSB that we all enjoy.
Yeah.
But I think my generation, a lot of us we do just watch streamers. It's because it's easy and Netflix has no adverts and it's just and everyone talks about those shows and they trend on Twitter and so more people go to them as a result of that. But there is, I think they would all those SVODs would want a channel if they could have a channel, if they could have a linear place to put all their programming. There's a lot that doesn't get watched on Netflix.
I'm really amazed.
A lot that doesn't get watched on Netflix at all.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I'm amazed that you said that, actually. I would have thought they would think having a linear channel was completely pointless.
I do think there's the way that things debut on a linear channel, like BBC Three, if you look at how it went when it went online, like it doesn't have that same zeitgeisty feel that it had. I feel like a lot more people watched those BBC Three shows and knew they existed when there was a linear channel. It's just a way of debuting things, and even if it is an older audience, that does filter through to the younger audience a bit.
I watched the BBC Three thing last night just because I was watching telly and it came up in their BBC Two slot. I think it might have been BBC One, and it was just on, and I was, oh, this is good, I'll watch it. And I don't know that I would have gone to find it on BBC Three. Yeah. So it's that kind of opportunist thing that happens.
Yeah, it's interesting if you look at sort of what Channel 4 was saying, and you know, most the linear channels are following suit. The way we're being asked to think is that it kind of works online first. But at the same time, you know, you do have to think about the schedules, because you know, is it a 9 o'clock? Is it an 8 o'clock? Because that impacts the budget. So whilst you want it to work online, which I think most shows kind of do work online naturally anyway, the linear schedules still are important, I think. And I think, you know, in terms of viewing figures, I think certain things still do much better on linear than they do online. So
yeah, it's interesting. And actually, I know that there's a big budget impact on whether or not a series is launched as a bingeable series with the entire series on accessible, or, you know, one per week release, because if you need them all ready to be viewed straight away, that's obviously crunches your schedule all the way down. I was having that interesting conversation last week. It's massively impactful, and you can't be editing and cutting still for for episode 7 when things are on air. So that's a kind of almost newer way of thinking about delivering developments. Right, so we've probably got 10 more questions of chatting. If you guys have got any questions as well, thanks to those who've already submitted, do drop us a comment in the Facebook box. So anything about development, or, you know, how it works, or what the difference is now compared to pre-COVID, it'd be lovely to hear from you. I suppose, shall we talk about, because a lot of the people who come to Talented People obviously are looking for work. So you guys are all I don't know, Abby, are you have you ever hired people for your own teams at your level?
No, I have not.
Not at this point. So you could talk from the candidate's point of view, perhaps, but the rest of you, I'm sure, have sort of been in hiring positions. Hiring developers then, do you have any sort of do's or don'ts for interviewing developers in terms of what the candidate should be sort of saying to you guys? I know, maybe if you don't say it, I'll say my sort of, my idea of something that everybody absolutely needs to say. But Lucy, do you want to start?
Enthusiasm and energy for television, a love of television. I mean, I kind of started TV as a runner, and I couldn't believe my luck when I got my first job, because all of a sudden I was working in this industry that I absolutely loved. And so I'm always looking for people who consume lots of content, not just on telly, but I just want to know what they're looking at and what they're reading, what they're seeing and what they're talking about. And to bring that to an interview and just to, gets me really excited, because I think you're going to tell me some stuff I don't know. And I think that's what's important to me, that you're joining my team and you're going to bring a brand new voice. You're confident, even though maybe you're not, show it. And also it's kind of know what you're going to bring to the table. What is your USP? I call it the superpower. What is the thing? And it doesn't have to be a skill. It can just be, where you're from, or your hobbies, or just the stuff you love watching. It's kind of, tell me what your passion is that you're going to bring to the team and get everybody else fired up. So that's I love it when I meet people.
Like infectious enthusiasm. Yeah. Okay, Kate, what do you think?
Everything Lucy said, and also watch TV. Make sure you don't have to rebroadcast and know every single tiny bit of gossip, but just know what's going on, know what programs are out there, even if you don't love Channel 5, know what's going on Channel 5, because it might come up in conversation. Know what the trends are. I'm not suggesting doing any hardcore research, but just watch telly.
Yeah.
And you can tell the difference between people who do and people who don't as well, and it really helps if you've seen this or that, or you just know what the channels are doing. It's really helpful.
Yeah, very good advice. They've probably said it all now, Anna, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. You're not expecting people coming in at a junior level to be the finished article, but that is a way that you can show your enthusiasm. And it sounds really basic, but if you're going to an unscripted company, make sure your favorite shows that you're asked about, because you will be asked, are unscripted shows. And as Kate says, I think it's really useful. It is throw something surprising in there. So yes, you probably are watching Married at First Sight and Love is Blind, or if that's your taste, but throw in that obscure daytime show that probably your execs can't face watching, or they don't have the time to watch.
Always happy to hear about daytime shows.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So I think that's it. And also just things that people can be doing now is upskilling themselves. Mm-hmm. You will always be valuable in a development team if you can do lots of practical things. For the photoshopping, shooting, editing is this the child? Yes.
I'm amazed that mine haven't video bombed yet. I can hear riots going on outside.
5 minutes.
Yes, Photoshop, editing, all those sorts of skills that you can.
A great sizzle.
Yeah.
Will make you so invaluable.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And actually, we're often asked when we're working on development searches, certainly at sort of APM producer level, that if you can cut and shoot maybe, but if you're really good at Photoshop and on nice treatments, then that's a massive bonus, because it almost feels like certainly the contemporary stuff that's required now, and stuff for streamers, as we've already said, they need all of that straight off the bat. And it's quite old school to just submit a written proposal, I think, now, isn't it? Wouldn't that be fair to say?
I think there's a myth that we always have to provide sizzles. I think there's always a time and a place for a sizzle, and they do eat up quite a lot of time. So we'll have a discussion about whether each idea needs a sizzle or not. Sometimes it's a paragraph, sometimes it's a page, sometimes it's a picture with a few lines. So it really does depend. Teams don't have unlimited resources, so we do have to cut our cloth according to what we think's not worth the effort, what needs that effort.
Yes, no, definitely. Well, you guys have said what I was going to say, which is watch telly. And it sounds really basic, doesn't it? But the amount of people actually that we hear from our clients, the production companies are interviewing, who say, they're just talking about drama box sets, and that's not
One
okay.
thing people have always like, I remember one interview where I referenced The Masked Singer before it was even in Britain, like before ITV had even acquired it. And I think like showing that you know what's going on internationally in formats is always really useful, because there are, like, I can see Your Voice is going to come to BBC soon, and that is such a good format. And if you know that format and your boss doesn't know about it, then, or your future boss, positive thinking, always will kind of stand out.
Ridiculously impressed with that, and it would have, that sets someone, the bar is high, and that sets someone quite far above it.
And Abby, how did you find out about that then? Where were you watching for the international stuff?
The internet is your friend. Ryan Reynolds went on South Korean The Masked Singer like in 2017 or something, and it went slightly viral. And I think as a result of that, that's how America actually found out about it. So I think like there's so many things like the internet, like especially like Reddit and places like that, things go viral, and they're always weird international shows that then will potentially South Korea is such a great place for like formats at the moment, I think, as well. And just like generally that's like East Asia is doing some really interesting stuff. So being on top of that kind of programming, and it's just fun. And it's fun entertainment, and everyone wants a bit of fun entertainment that means nothing, I think, at the moment as well. So it's always good. But I always, when I send my CV, I always send a little tape that I've cut before, and that doesn't go anywhere. And then also a deck as well that I've designed and written, so that they know that I can write and that I can Photoshop quite well. So then they have no questions about my abilities as a development person.
Yes, that's very smart. I've been scribbling stuff down here, hoping that like you guys watching are also doing the same. But it's so interesting, and watching the global markets, I think that is a very good point, the international formats. And where else should we be looking then? So South Korea and East Asia, where else? Are there other sort of channel or things like TikTok?
I mean, I'm always on TikTok. And there's so many people at home doing really interesting things on TikTok at the moment as well. So like there's weird stuff going on everywhere. I think there's loads of YouTubers who do really interesting things as well. There's so much talent everywhere. And Instagram as well. I mean, like Munya Chihuahua, for example, blew up during lockdown, because people at home and they're watching all these like great online personalities come to the forefront.
Yeah, he's excellent. Kate, what were you going to say?
No, all I was saying is I love YouTube. It's so, I mean, most of it's ridiculous, but sometimes it's ridiculous in a good way. And it's got that, it's really relaxing as well. If you just need to switch your brain off for 10 minutes, there's probably a YouTube video for you that will enable you to think about nothing. And it does, I mean, we've been doing what Lucy describes and kind of throwing clips and talking about things we've been watching as a development exercise, just to stop all the conversations being very, very business focused. And there's a lot of YouTube flying around on our emails at the moment, just in terms of, look at this ridiculous thing, what can we learn from it? Possibly nothing, but so there's sometimes a little nugget there.
And it's like someone else mentioned the shower earlier. It's always in the shower. I get these lateral thoughts. What is that? Because you're not really thinking of much, except whether you've got enough lather in your hair.
Possibly.
I don't know.
There. I definitely would say the likes of TikTok and Instagram. One of my favourite ideas on our slate at the moment came from a researcher who spotted something going on quite a lot on Insta, and it's now become something much bigger. And they've kind of got a bit of ownership of that idea, which is really nice. They came with that, and they are now attached as the person who had the seed of that idea. They're staying across the whole development for it. So I do think that there are, the more senior members of the team are often trying to mine the younger members of the team for what's going on and what they're watching and what their friends are doing. And I think that as a more junior member, that's where your value can really come in handy.
I just think it's so exciting though, like the ideas are everywhere. Everything you guys have just listed, from where to look, what to watch, it's stuff that you would do in your spare time, surely. If you guys just got a job that is basically your hobby that you get paid for. It seems like it. Good fun. Thank you to Francis for another question here. So Francis Beer asks, a lot of development roles advertised require that you already have long-term pure development experience to be considered for the job. Do you have any more advice for getting a foot in the door for these jobs if you don't have that experience, but you have funded or lots of production experience, for example? What do you guys think?
Think about the development you've done. Development you've done while you've been in production. I had that experience. I'd done loads and loads of production, but no pure development. And if there are productions you've worked on where you've had to find stories or contributors, that is development experience. And it's not writing pictures and making them look beautiful, cutting sizzles, but it's valuable, and it's worth emphasising those things. Everyone at some point, if they've got loads of production experience, has done some development tasks, not necessarily the whole shebang, but certainly.
Yeah, I would say that people with access to experience, casting experience, you know, they're invaluable to development teams if you know that you have those, they have those skills. You know, you can bring, you know, you bring the people on for some quite specific projects, and then, you know, hopefully they stay longer term once they've kind of, you know, kind of embedded in the team.
So it's not just there are people who only want you if you have pure development because you've got that sort of that lateral brain, or you've got the experience of the commissioner landscape, I suppose, which you can't get when you're hopping in and out of production necessarily. But I mean, I don't know, Anna, would you agree with that?
I think there are some roles that, you know, on smaller teams that maybe need that. I came, again, like Kate, purely from a production background and then sort of worked my way into development. And so it is entirely possible at producer level to then make a career out of development. I mean, I would say that if you are doing the funded or you are within a company, you know, do grab that head of development or development exec or creative director for a coffee. Do send ideas that you've got then, and do just like keep a dialogue. You just never know. But yeah, absolutely, all of those skills are so useful when you've, you know some ideas go from paper to production and they barely change in format. Some ideas are created or, you know, tweaked on the ground, and that again is a really key part of development, making the format work, and that would make you very valuable.
Yeah. Abby, have you been in development and production? What's your route been?
I knew how hard it was to get into development, right? Because I did a bit of distribution stuff, hence the international market,
yes.
like eyes on that prize. But so I realized from friends that it's quite difficult to make that jump into development in the first place. So I like hammered home that I wanted to work in development in my first few jobs. So I've had an easier time. I've done a bit of production when I was at BBC Studios following things through. However, yeah, my mainstay is development. But I do think that it's about emailing people when not necessarily there is a job post up. It's about making those connections with those creative directors, and also like when you're doing production. I know I've had a few friends who've been doing production at indies that I've been at, and they will just pitch to their head of development a new idea or an idea that, and you can always be involved in that development if you're working on at the end or at the start of a production, maybe do a couple of weeks with the development team as well in that way. So I think that, you know, make the most of those contacts that you already do have and those connections that you can quite easily make as well. People will reply to emails, especially if you're like really keen, which I'm guessing you are.
Yeah. And do you think you Eleanor, right, is asking, do you think you can work entirely in development then? I mean, lots of you guys do only. I mean, Kate, you hop between execing and development. Lucy, you're just development and have been for a long time. Anna, the same, or you exec across projects at the same time?
I hop between, but my main task is to bring in new business.
Yeah, so I don't know. I would say to Eleanor that I think you absolutely can be in development full time, long term. I think as long as you're keeping yourself relevant, which inevitably you are, if you're climbing up the ladder and you're fairly senior, I think it can be massively advantageous if you have production experience as well. But it's very different. I mean, I was a director before talent, and I used to do PDing and then a bit of funded development stuff, PDing and a bit of funded, and that feels more natural than that real core developer within a company who has to get to know that landscape thoroughly and build relationships with commissions. I do kind of see it as it is a separate stream, I think. Would you agree, Lucy, with that?
It's quite hardcore development, you know. With production, you kind of, you know, there's a kind of journey that you go on, and there's always an end. Whereas development is a marathon; it never ends. You know, it's kind of, and the rejection is relentless. And so yes, I think you've got to be getting the mindset, and you've also got to, as I was kind of, when I was a producer, it was something that I just was always checking myself. Am I taking the best ideas to the meetings? Am I looking in the right places? You've just got to keep just make sure you're not I don't know. I think it's it's your responsibility to keep yourself fresh with new ideas and keep the energy going. And it's hard, you know. And sometimes people do need a break and to go back into production. So, you know, but I mean, I really love the marathon. I love the rejection, because every now and then you get that little ray of sunshine and it's the best feeling ever. And I make sure everybody celebrates with me. And people say, Lucy, all they did was say they quite liked it and they'd like to see a new draft. And I'm like, you've got to celebrate when you can, you know. And I think, you know, development is absolutely brilliant when you get those kind of moments. But yeah, it's a slog.
Yeah, it is a slog. I'm aware we've only got a few minutes left, so a couple more things. Abby, I wanted to ask you about authorship. I think you have quite strong feelings on that in development, right?
Yeah, I think Kate probably said it best when she was talking about the disability ideas that she come up with. And I do think that, you know, development isn't as diverse part of TV as it could be and should be. And so I think I would encourage anyone who is diverse in any of those forms to really try and get a role in development, because I think that there's the natural authorship that comes from a person who understands a community or understands a space that other people don't. Like, you know, you're going to get a great and very different offering. And I do think that, you know, generally I've always been like the only person of color in any development team I've been in, and I would love to be in a development team with more than one of us. So authorship is so important with like actually making a program that is really authentic and really speaks in a way that others don't, I think.
No, I think they are all amazing points, very important and relevant for the time being, and with all of your work with the TV task force, legendary stuff. And just a reminder that anybody who is new to us at Talented People, we are big champions of people from all underrepresented groups, disabled people, and we'll talk to you. You know, we are the human sort of version of just submit your CV. We'll talk to you about your application, or if you need any adjustments, or if you want us to disclose something or not, it's up to you. But we kind of inhabit that middle space where we hope that you feel safe, and you know, we champion people who may not even be perfect for the role, because when is there really anyone who is perfect for a role? There's other things that can be brought onto the table that we can help our clients find. And so if you send us your CV and let us know anything like that, then that would be amazing. I think that is yes, that is 2 o'clock. I can't believe that went so fast. Thank you guys so much. I feel like the things that I've jotted down, because I like to sort of summarize at the end, is I think love and enthusiasm for development, super important, especially now when you're watching news, which is, you know, it's all quite difficult and depressing. Taking breaks, going for walks, taking up French and piano and embroidery. Abby, who's going to make or sing something for us next time she's on a session. Upskilling, I think that was a really good point. You know, if you have more time on your hands right now, I know a lot of people don't if they have other commitments, but if you do, find out, you know, how to ask your friend, ask people how to do brilliant Photoshop, take YouTube tutorials, anything like that that could be helpful for your next development interview, and then kind of go for it. I think there's a message of positivity here, which is just go for it. Email that person for a quick 20-minute Zoom and pitch your idea to them, to that creative director of a company, or just submit your idea and put a nice photoshopped CV or pitch together like Abby suggested, so that they know what you can do. It is a time of opportunity. It's a time of real difficult different circumstances right now, but it is also potentially a time for opportunity if you try and flip it on its head. So thank you all so much for your input, and thank you guys for watching this. It's been lovely to read your comments, and we will see you, if not next Wednesday, the one after at lunchtime. Any suggestions for sessions you want to see as well, do email us, and you can submit your CV via our jobs board, which is on talentedpeople.tv. But thank you ever so much, you guys, and I will speak to you all soon, no doubt. Take care. Bye-bye.